Hello everybody, Benjamin from Gaggle here. This video is for anybody that works in the volunteering sector because we have an idea and a model that we believe is going to transform volunteering. Now, it's a 2x2 matrix, which may seem unsexy, but we're going to prove that it's both beautiful, dare I say it, sexy, and also going to have an amazing impact on the volunteering sector. Because what this is going to do is to ensure that every time that somebody needs to hire a volunteer, they get the perfect person. Now, anybody that works in volunteering knows that getting the right person with the right skills and the right motivation and attitude is really tough to do. And the challenge is if you get the wrong volunteer, then it can actually sometimes cause more harm than good. But if you get the right volunteer, they have an amazing impact. You create what you're trying to create much quicker, then they volunteer again and they get their friends to come along with them. So we really need to make sure that we get the right volunteer every single time. The question is, how do we do that? Well, we believe we have the model. Now, as I say, it's a 2x2 matrix, and on the left-hand side, what we're looking at is the level of need. So in the bottom left-hand corner, we have something where the volunteer is addressing something that's important, but not necessarily critical. And as they move up the left-hand axis, what they're contributing towards becomes ever more critical. And on the bottom, what we're looking at is the length of impact. And what we mean by that is, when they go in as a volunteer, what they contribute, how long does that last? So that can go from purely in the moment. For example, if they were volunteering in an orphanage and they're playing games with the kids, which helps lighten the workload of the poor staff that are always overstretched, then that's creating a great contribution, it's really important. But the moment that volunteer goes, that resource is gone, so it's only in the moment. Through to what the volunteer contributes has an impact which lasts for a generation plus. So for example, if there's a community that has no school and no teachers, if the volunteer goes in and educates and trains someone to be a great teacher, they will have an impact for a generation beyond, because that teacher will teach a couple of generations of kids and then they'll train the next teacher, and so it goes on forever. Now, this is really important on two levels. The first thing is it provides a common language for us to use in the volunteering sector about where we are serving and therefore where we need the volunteers to serve. So in this top left-hand box, we have what we call critical response. And that's because the need is really critical. But the impact you're having is for a short-term period, but that's because it needs to be, and that's the thing it can only be. So here we're talking about an Ebola crisis, or a tsunami, or a refugee crisis. It's just about getting stuff done immediately. In this bottom left-hand box, we have what we call, it's my favourite title of the lot, hands on deck. So there's a bunch of volunteering out there that it's kind of short-term, and it's important stuff, but it's not necessarily critical, but it really needs doing. And every charity and charitable projects in the world really needs loads of volunteers normally in this space of just getting stuff done. Then in this top right-hand box, what we have is sustainable development, a very familiar phrase. Because things in here, it's critical. So healthcare, education, critical things. And what we need to implement as volunteers is going to last for a long time, and typically requires volunteers to contribute quite a lot of time and be there for some time. And this bottom right hand box, what we have is what we call operational change. Now sometimes a little bit of a grey area between hands on deck and sustainable development, but generally speaking this is quite important things that really help an organisation tick. So if you think about a healthcare organisation in an impoverished community, most of their work is in critical response and sustainable development, i.e. they're trying to save lives and also they're trying to develop long-term palliative care, for example. But what they also need, like most organisations, is they need a website, they need great project management, they need to manage their resources really well. And volunteers in this space will be doing operational things which are really important to a project. Now, immediately what that gives us is a way to address volunteers to say, okay, you're going to be a hands on deck or you're going to be a critical response, which itself is a leap forward. But it's the second level where this becomes really powerful. So in each of these areas, there are very different roles that exist, like in any organisation. So let's take critical response. So in a critical response scenario, you will need a leader and you will need a project manager, and then you will need people that just do stuff, the actual work that needs to be done. So in a refugee crisis, it could be pulling people from a boat, it could be building shelters, it could be putting in electricity. Now, these roles, those people will require some strengths to be very similar. So in a critical response, almost everybody needs to be very emotionally stable, which sounds kind of silly, but it's true. You're dealing with chaos, you're dealing with traumatic things, and everybody there needs to make sure that they are really, really stoic and able to handle that type of thing. But then there's other things that will be different for each of the roles. So a leader needs to be visionary, but a project manager doesn't need to be visionary. But a project manager needs to be very detail orientated and be brilliant at planning, which a leader doesn't necessarily need. And the problem comes when you get somebody that goes into a project management role, but really they don't have the right skill set to do that. And likewise, I've seen many a times when you get someone that's there to just be a doer, I get stuff done, but in their normal life back home, they're like a really big brain, visionary leader. And what they can often do is come in and go, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. And then they kind of hassle the leader and they're actually not doing the work that they're meant to be doing, and they cause more harm than good. And so it's not to say that actually you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be doing that, but it's rather, let's put people where their strengths lie. Now, this is where this becomes really powerful, because what this will create is about 12 to 15 different roles in the volunteering sector. And if you imagine you log on to Gaggle and there's a game that you play there where you click on it and go, it's called What Type of Volunteer Are You? And you answer a bunch of questions which seem really cool and about volunteering, like, for example, do you prefer chaos or do you prefer calm? And at the end of that, what that will give you is to say, well, the type of volunteer that you are roles 1, 5 and 8. So what that's saying is your strengths lie in, say, this box and this role, this box and this role, and then this box. But actually you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, because your strengths lie elsewhere. Now, what that then gives us is the ability to assess, when we need a particular type of volunteer, who is the best person for that role. So for example, say there is a critical response and we immediately need 10 leaders in that response. If you've had 100,000 people that have played that game where it says what type of volunteer are you, and we have a database that says, well, for this role, which is 1A, which is a project leader in a crisis situation, we have these 10,000 people. You can immediately email those people who you know are already qualified to have those skills to say, we need you, we need your strengths in this place immediately. And then therefore what we're doing is creating an easy way to not only get the right volunteers, but get the right volunteers at pace. So this is what we wish to create, this is what we're going to create. And to do that we need two things. We need an organisation that's an expert in psychometrics and strengths finding. And the second thing is we need input from experts in this area. Now we know quite a lot about the volunteering sector, but we don't know enough. And so what we need is people, working organisations from all these areas that can help us work out what are the key strengths each of these roles need. And once we have that, we can build the game we're going to play, and then suddenly we're going to create this amazing database of the right volunteers to get to the right place at the right time. So if you'd like to get involved with that, we'd love to hear from you. Our website is jointhegaggle.com. You can email me personally at benjamin@jointhegaggle.com. We hope to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Take care.
You make